Today on Exegetically Speaking, a throwback to our very first podcast in 2018. Hi, everybody. I'm David Capes. It's my honor to be the host of this podcast from my post at the Lanier Theological Library and Learning Center in Houston, Texas. John Walton was our first exegesis expert in 2018. I asked him to begin our series of podcasts with this question: what is exegesis? Here's Dr. Walton. Joining me today is Professor John Walton. He's been here for, 18 years now, John?
That's correct.
All right, and we're so glad that you're a part of this, author of lots of books, particularly in the Old Testament. You're reading Hebrew, right?
Indeed.
Now, when we started talking about the idea of a podcast called Exegetically Speaking, you had a great question. You said,
what in the world is exegesis?
That's right. That's a word that we use all the time, and we know what it means, but let's talk about it. What does it mean?
Even our students in this program called Biblical Exegesis find themselves struggling to define that to their friends and family. So It's important to talk about it.
Yeah, it is. How does John Walton talk about it?
Well, in my mind, it refers to the entire process of analyzing and interpreting the biblical text. It can be seen in more compact ways, but I really think we need to think about that whole process. We analyze and we interpret.
And go through several stages, I would imagine, to do that. First of all, you have to have the text before you, and you have original languages in Hebrew in the Old Testament, also some portions in Aramaic. So you've got to know the original languages, right?
Well, that's a big part of it. I actually start them out on the exegetical process by doing what I call a literary top-down kind of analysis.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Well, that involves knowing what kind of genre you're dealing with, and by genre I'm talking about an ancient genre context, not our modern genre labels.
Like a podcast.
Yeah. Then to talk about understanding critical analysis of the text, which often involves questions about composition and history and things of that sort. And then it also involves what I call the rhetorical strategy. That is, how was this book put together? Whether it's Genesis or Joshua or whatever it is, it's been compiled very carefully. And so how has the author put it together so the pieces all work together to achieve his purpose? So that's kind of a literary aspect to it.
And that's the question of genre, did you say?
Yeah, that's genre's part of that, but
so
also
in
just
the old
fiction.
What are the genres that you deal with?
You have genres that talk about the topic it's dealing with, cosmology, things of that sort. We have genres that deal with wisdom literature, but you have to understand what wisdom is in the ancient world. We have narrative literature, although narrative can be used for numerous genres. Sometimes we talk about history, although even that one can be problematic because our understanding of history may be different than in the ancient world. Prophecy is another genre.
What about law codes? I mean, because when I learned the Bible originally, there was law, and then there were prophets. And are there law codes?
Well, we can spend a lot of time talking about that. I'm not persuaded that they're either law or codes. And so, again, understanding that genre can be real important. And that comes into another aspect of literary top-down, which is the backgrounds, understanding the background of the book. And I don't mean authorship. I mean in the ancient world is also part of the exegetical process.
So if you're talking about wisdom, you've got to understand wisdom in the ancient
Right.
world. If you understand prophecy, what is prophecy in the ancient world? Not necessarily in a modern sort of idea, post-Enlightenment idea.
Exactly. So all of those are parts of this literary top-down process. And that literary top-down process eventually drives you into what I call the linguistic core. And here's where the languages come into play. It kind of starts out with what's called discourse analysis. That is now not how the book is put together, that's rhetorical strategy, but how the passage is put together.
So does that passage mean like a chapter?
Sometimes a chapter or a speech or a psalm or something of that sort. So discourse analysis, how the author has constructed that section of the book. Of course, alongside of that, you have to do text criticism. Are we sure we have the text that we ought to be looking at? Have there been transmission errors along the way? But then most of the linguistic core is taken up with issues of syntax, morphology, grammar, and especially lexical semantics, that is, the meanings of words.
But how are word meanings determined?
Word meaning is determined by usage. And that's just a very quick statement that involves a lot of complication. And we can talk about that in another podcast. But that's important. I mean, it's true that words don't carry meaning by themselves. They contribute to meaning, but if we don't know what the words mean, we're not going to understand the discourse or the rhetorical strategy.
As I remember translating through the book of Job a few years ago, there were some words there that,
boy,
it's sort of our best guess what a word means. And so to one degree why translations differ. Let me read this real quickly from Mike Gorman. I'm using his book in a course on exegesis of Matthew. And he says, exegesis may be defined as the careful, historical, literary, and theological analysis of a text.
And that
so you would
up,
agree?
Sure. And that brings up the third important part. That is, once we've done the linguistic core, now we have to do the theological bottom-up. Now we understand the text. So now we have to talk about how it builds theology. Biblical theology, historical theology, systematic theology, and even practical theology. And I see all of that as part of the exegetical process.
So all that works together to make exegesis.
Exactly. So
and that's why we do what we do in the Master of Arts in Biblical Exegesis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Literary top-down, linguistic core, theological bottom-up.
Makes sense. John, thanks for being with us today here on Exegetically Speaking.
You're welcome.
John Walton is an institution and has been for many years. He is wise indeed. You could become an institution as well. Take up the mantle of reading Scripture and reading it well in the original languages, and you will do great things for the kingdom. Guarantee it. How do you get started? Well, I'm glad you asked. Wheaton College is the answer that you're looking for. Follow the links in the show notes, and they'll take you to the right people and places at Wheaton College. Get started today. John Lonsma, Joy Chin, Rebecca Larson, and Kathy Capes help us produce this podcast. It's a great team. Thanks to them all. Phil Keggy has done our music. Till next time, I'm David Capes. Thanks for listening.